with you this week. And this week, I can't believe for the first time ever in 4 years, we are doing a Fix a Test episode. Thanks to Ride IQ member Courtney Becker, who wrote in and said, one, you need to have Valerie Pride on for anything, and two, she would be great at Fix a Test. So, Courtney, thank you for doing basically making all of these stars align and suggesting should, what will certainly be a very educational evening. And I was going to say, what should have been a very obvious topic for us to do, but here we are. We're finally doing it, and with no better expert than Valerie Pride. So, Valerie, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you. I thought you would say it should be a lot of fun because maybe some people out there thinking that dressage wasn't going to be fun tonight, but hopefully you're thinking that it's going to be a really fun episode.
This should be a lot of fun. It could be, it should be, and it will be. And we got so many great videos. Valerie and I were just scrolling through them. You guys are, I mean, you all just inspire me so much, and I love seeing your horses. So thank you to everyone who sent a video in. We're going to get through as many as we can. Maybe before we dive into this first one, Valerie, will you give us a little bit of background on yourself? And I know you've done Fix a Test clinics in the past, so maybe mention like how you got into that, and how those have been.
Yeah, definitely. So I am a FEI level 3 judge and a USEF S judge. So basically, I can judge 5 stars and everything around the world and all the events in the states. But I was raised by two amazing ladies who have judged the Olympics. Linda Zhang, Marilyn Payne, my just biggest mentors, and I adore them. And it took a while to occur to me that not everybody had this upbringing and these same experiences. So, what had just been drilled into me and the words that they use and the things that I was trained to see and prioritize, not everybody had that same experience. So, what I do, and I offer these at my farm, Blue Clover Venning, we do these tune ups where you're just kind of getting this feedback, and we talk about anything from like you'll ride through your test and I talk about what was your warm up, do you use that bit, don't carry a whip, on like just basic things, but also what are some things that the judge really is looking for. I hear people say sometimes after their test like the corner doesn't count, like it's not getting scored, and I want to just like what? So maybe tonight will help, fact or fiction, and, help talk through some of this stuff. And also maybe what we can do to help you get just a half a point better. A half a point better on each movement is 5% better on your test. So now you're walking out of that ring with a 25 instead of a 30. So now you can go
Amazing.
into show jumping and have a rail and like still be in the lead. Hey, I mean, like this sounds great.
That's what we're here for. So clearly, we are all going to be glued to our screens for the next hour because I want that rail in hand.
Yeah.
So let's do it. The first test we're going to look at is Krista Wilson and Stella. And for those of you who are in the Ride IQ Facebook group, you know this pair well, and we love them dearly. So I'm so excited we get to go through this test first. I'm going to click play here. You can see all keep up with the test itself on the left hand side so that you know the movements that Chris is going through in the video. And then, Valerie, if you need me to pause it all, tell me to pause. I'm here to help. And we'll just see how this goes.
Great. So remember on this entry, the whole point is that a green horse rider not trying to have to make a tight turn. So not trying to face the scary judge's box. They did a good job of keeping the horse on kind of the regular size stride. Could have been a little bit steadier in the bridle. So I'm thinking 6.5. We've now gotten to the part of the circle kind of wrapping around the inside leg. It got better as it went. Judges appreciate when things get better as it goes. I like the energy and it's settled. So I'm thinking that we could be going up to a 7. We're establishing the circle in this movement. That was very patient for the canter to part. I like that. I'm giving it a 7. Now our canter itself could be a little bit better balanced. You can see the horse nodding on the bridle a little bit, but it's keeping the shape of the circle. So I'm back down on my 6.5. And you can tell that the same thing is true as it comes back to the trot. It's a little quick. It needs a little bit more balance, little half halts. So that's going to be another 6.5. We're going to go across the diagonal here. You need to ride a direct line, which they did. Could be more supple, even though you're going straight. You're supposed to show that your horse has kind of some flexibility there and a change of bend. I didn't see that for the 7. Remember, the word 7 means fairly good. So I'm going to stay on my 6.5. But now I'm thinking this circle looks better and more supple. You can see the horse is getting more settled into the contact again. So I'm happier. So I'm going to go up in my score back to my 7. This test is nice. It's symmetrical, even though these half circles are stinky to remember. So you do 1.5 circles. So this was about the same as the other direction. So I'm going to think it was prompt 7. And our balance here is maybe a little better. The horse is still just a little tight in the neck, a little braced, 6.5. Just needs to get a little stronger. But the transition back was a little bit better, had better tempo. So we get that from our posting. The rider had a better idea, maybe was a little more prepared. So I'm going to stay on my 7. Here, the walk could have a little bit more energy. You need to try to walk with a purpose. So might think a 7. It was accurate, but I'm not on the edge of my seat. Here we have our free walk. We're willing to let the horse stretch down. We can still steer on our long reins. A little tight in the shoulders. It's a little picky for beginner novice, so I'm going to say, again, on that 7. So we're feeling like this is a pretty solid pair for this level. Came back up nicely into the bridle. Could have been a little steadier in the contact. So I'm going to think 6.5, but the stride stayed the same. We don't like the steps to shorten when the reins shorten. So did a good job of keeping the same size of stride. It's a long way to go all the way around that arena. So good job with that. A nice straight halt and salute. Solid into the test. I'd go up to a 7.5. So
Wow, that was so, I felt like I was, like, meditating. It was so fun to listen to you, and I also decided that I need to be scribing because that was so fun to hear. So, I know we have some collective marks on this test too,
yeah,
and
so
then
what
yeah,
I'd
go ahead.
say about that, right? So when we think about this, when we go back, everything you think that that was a pleasant test, and what you said, we had an easy time watching, keeping up with it all. So that usually means that things were going well. That rider had time to think about what she was doing next. The horse felt prepared. There wasn't anything extravagant about what was going on. So that's what we think our marks for an 8, 9, and 10 are good, very good, and excellent. So there wasn't anything there that was like razzle dazzle, had me on the edge of my seat. But that's what's going into your mind for this bottom mark here, this harmony of the athlete and horse, that they were a well suited pair. They were accurate with what they did. The horse could get a little stronger. That a biggest comment that kept coming across was that we needed a little bit more balance and a little bit more suppleness. So they're on the right track. So I would think that I would give that a 7. And that's key. That one score counts twice. So it's a coefficient. So that overall impression, you're trying to make a good impression. Um, and they did. So well done with that. Just keep doing what you're doing is what I would say there.
How awesome. Yeah, that was just I mean, I'll say it again, such a fun test to watch. And for Krista and Stella, they're one of a number of pairs when they wrote in, they were like, if there's any suggestions that Valerie have as far as like exercises we could do at home or things that you're seeing on a recurring basis, which I know you just mentioned, that they can keep in mind in their training. Is there anything else you want to leave Stella and Krista with before we move on to the next
Yeah.
test and chair?
So totally, really obedient. So I would say that the canter trot canter transitions, it looks like this is a horse that's not going to be too anxious or excitable. Something like that, it would be really, you could get some more strength and kind of development on there. Be really good to establish like a 20-meter circle. And on that circle, could you pick up the trot and canter maybe within 2 circles 4 times, keeping like same shape of the circle, same bend, get that timing. Think that you're not going to run back into the trot, race back into the canter, something like that. So that would really help isolate the kind of strength and timing that you need to step in and out of the canter. That every time you work on the canter, it makes your trot stronger, right? But working on your gallop doesn't make your canter stronger. So the only thing that you can do for that is just to keep cantering. But the transitions in and out of it are something that will help with that. And that would be something that would be helpful for that horse because that was where it lacked the most strength.
I love it. And it gave me the perfect amount of time to pull up our next rider.
Oh,
So thank you. I'm like scrambling with my tests and my video, but next up we have the USEA starter test, and Katie Brown is going to be our demo rider for this one.
all right.
So let me pull up our screen so you guys can see what I see. You see Katie. I'll hide this so it's not bothering us. Here's our test.
Good. And I would
And we're
say have in mind that this is going to be very similar to the test that we just saw. You'll see some similarities, but we have now a little bit less expectation. So this horse doesn't need to be like as balanced, as accepting of the contact, right? Like this horse doesn't have to be in an outline by any means. It just needs to be kind of forward from the leg, freely forward is like kind of the big idea for starter, and that it kind of steps up to the contact and accepts the fact that there's some bit there. So a fairly similar idea. We have the same center line. So we can see again that we're trying to not have to make the horse stare down the judge's box. They wanted to get a little quick when they first started, and the head carriage is just like a little bit braced the whole time. It's a little lacking focus. So I'm going to think 6. They don't have to circle in front of the scary judge. They get to come up into the middle. So that's going to help a little bit. But I would want to see this horse starting to move a little bit more off of the rider's inside leg. So we want the bend in the neck to think about bending, matching the bend in the rib cage. So I want to see a little bit more suppleness in bend. So I'm going to stay on my 6 for that circle there. This movement is about putting the canter depart and the circle together. So we had a prompt depart. But then if you watch this horse's canter, unfortunately, it's not a clear 3-beat canter. So the quality of the canter, even though the depart was so obedient, it's not a truly 3-beat canter. So I got to average those things together, and I'm going to think a 6. The transition back was obedient, but it's still out of this canter that was a little bit unclear. So a 6. But then very happy to walk, and now you can see it's more relaxed in the walk. So I might go up to a 6.5. And now this is great. The rider's more relaxed, softens the elbows, and look at how the horse is stretching into the contact. So this tells us everyone's taking a breath. I'm going to go way up on this mark. I'm going to go at least 7 or 7.5. I want this rider to take this home. When you took a breath and relaxed, look at how your horse stretched down. And now, can you keep that as you go? So we went into our walk, our working walk, and the horse stayed a little bit that way. But now, as we picked back up our trot, we noticed that the bracing comes back and we're a little bit hollow. So we need to work on a little bit more independence with our seat and our leg and our rein. So I'm going to go back into my sixes for this circle so that we start to work on more the inside leg to outside rein connection. But the size of the circle was okay. So we don't have to dip into our fives, right? So we're still being accurate. We have another obedient to part. It happens in the first quarter of the circle like it's supposed to. But again, the horse doesn't have a clear 3 beats. And there we can tell it's a little sassy. And then really good correction. So the wrong lead unfortunately gets you a 4, but you were so fast to make the correction. As a judge, I still have to give you a 4, but I'm proud of you for thinking really fast because nobody likes bad things like that to happen during their test, but good on you to fix it. And then I'll go up to a 6.5 for the transition back. So it's only one box. We have the same way that we avoid the tight center line turn. And then you finish with an almost square halt. From the front, that might have looked square. Remember, we weren't judging from the same position as the actual judge. So that halt being its own movement might have been able to even get a 7.5 or an 8 from the side. We could see that the hind leg wasn't quite there, but anytime that on a starter test that I could go up like that, you don't have to have a fancy mover and a halt, right? You can get a really good score for a halt, and that would be a really solid finish, especially to keep your cool after something like a wrong lead happened. So good on you for that.
That was so fun to watch. That horse, you can tell she's just so sweet. Um, and it's always fun when Katie sends in videos. So thank you, Katie, for sending that in. And I can see now why. I mean, so many trainers who have been on Ask an Expert before are like, go be a scribe. And it's like every one of these tests, it's so interesting to hear how you're making your decision. Like, you appreciate the change of lead, but still has to be a 4.
Yeah.
And
And
you loved how she stretched in the free walk. It's really, really cool to give riders these tools in their tool belt.
And if she hadn't have tried to change lead back, then it would have been a 3 or a 2. And then it would have
Wow.
actually affected the next mark because then she would have been coming back from the canter to the trot on the wrong lead. So then it would have affected that. So that was really good. And this is really good for everybody watching to see that you can't just like pretend that it didn't happen. So
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
thank you for being brave to send this in because you just saved a lot of other people watching from when this happened. Yeah, that we can all learn from that. Definitely.
Yeah,
So
we've definitely all seen and been in tests when you're like, "Oh, I hope they didn't see that," but of course you saw it.
yeah,
All you're doing right now is watching. Okay, let's talk
very
about
good.
collective marks for that pair.
Yes. So the collective mark. So this one is a little tricky because we do have, even though we're talking about harmony, we do have the fact that the quality of the canter wasn't always true, and that's hard. And that's not something necessarily like the horse might have just come with that, and that might be naturally how that horse is, and they might be working on it. But we're kind of having to factor that a little bit into our score. It might also be a little bit tension based. The same thing can happen to the walk. Um, and we had the fact that in the trot, we know that it stayed like a little bit hollow, a little bit stiff. So we're probably having to think about a 6. And it's not a super reflection of the fact that the rider was doing something necessarily to create this, but the rider needs to be more effective in order to help make more happen to support the horse so that we can be trending towards what's more what kind of what we're hoping for as ideal. So big ask for the starter level, but we're supposed to be thinking about the training and the training scale as we factor in this harmony.
Okay, I love that. And for Katie with this horse specifically, do you have suggestions for her similar to Krista that she could be working on at home that
Yeah,
might help them at their next show?
definitely. She was so good and showed such a good free walk. It would be interesting if she's brave. Can she start incorporating some concepts of like long and low work in the trot so that she can start to be braver with what does it feel like to maybe think about riding this horse on a longer contact and what does it feel like to think about riding the horse like the proverbial carrot dangling in front of you. What would it feel like to ride that horse out in front of you that far as you go around, and start to see if you can't trust that idea as you go around a bit? Because the horse seemed very willing in the walk to do that, and see if you can't challenge yourself some with that idea in the trot.
That I love that visual. And I we've had a judge on before who said he sees a lot of the horse and rider's best work right after the salute, when they both, just like take the deep breath, like you said, Katie and this horse did in the free walk, and relax a bit.
Yeah.
And so when you were giving us the play by play of that movement, that came to mind for me because it seems like that was true. But she made it happen before the salute.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
kudos to her for
It's
making it happen
there.
in the test.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our next test, I loved the fact or fiction mention at the beginning of this. Is there anything that we should discuss with regards to corners, or where transitions are taking place, or the amount of bend, or anything that you're seeing pretty regularly in tests that might be a misconception that we could talk about now, maybe to keep an eye on in these upcoming tests that we look at?
Yeah. So when you are, especially as you have like the test up at the top, that's really helpful. That certain things, the way that we're trained to judge, is one movement doesn't end until the next letter starts for the next box. So you might have, which is why I said for that halt in the starter test, it's the only thing in that box. So that is an opportunity to get a really high score. Or as you put this up on the screen here, so the if you look at box 2, C track right, B circle right 20 meters. The essence of that movement is what we would call it, is the circle right. Then you're still getting scored for box 2 all the way until you get around to K, to change rein KXM. If between B and K, and you had to, let's say you did the most beautiful track right and a beautiful circle right 20 meters, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm giving this an 8. This is fantastic. And then you get up to the top of the arena and your horse sees something up by A, spooks, and almost jumps out of the arena. I now have to cross out my 8 and give you like a 6.5 because it's spooked, right? So it's kind of like a modifier, but that's kind of how you read this test. So the bulk of it is there, but every part of the arena is accounted for in the test. That's one thing that I don't think people say it. The FEI tests get confusing because a lot of times they list every letter that you pass to make that point loud and clear. But sometimes it also gets a little bit overwhelming. This is a little bit more simple to process through, but you do have to tell yourself that um, you are being watched everywhere. It's just some things might be weighted more than other things.
How interesting. I hadn't heard that described before. And to be honest, I didn't, wonder where where my score was between B and K, for example, but that makes perfect sense. And it makes perfect sense that every step you're in the ring is a step that you see in your score.
Right. Yep. So, and parts of it are, you know, like we said, some of it is more important than other aspects, but all of it is there. So you are being watched. But that's where, if you read through your test ahead of time, you can kind of think about also, where are these little moments where maybe the judge isn't able to see you that well. And if your back is to the judge a little bit, that's a nice place to think like, oh, I need to shorten my reins here, or I could give a little half halt there. My horse is getting a little heavy. I need to give like a bigger half halt here. Or when you are, coming through the corner, get yourself organized so that when you're riding right in front of the judge and I'm seeing your profile, you don't look like you're doing anything. That would be really nice, right? Yeah, that learning the test is not just memorizing the pattern. Sometimes it's really helpful to think about where these things happen and letting you know where you can prepare ahead of time for something so that you're not just caught in this state of reacting through your dressage test. You don't want to be like a passenger or a victim of your dressage test. You want to ride your test, right? Not just get in there and freeze and back off and wait and see what your horse is going to do. Hopefully you're able to actually ride through your test.
I'm getting my notebook so I can write down "Don't be a victim of your dressage test" because I think that's such a great takeaway, to be honest. Like, it is funny, but it also is, makes a lot of sense. And the suggestion to be strategic, not just memorize and know which way you're going to turn, but have a strategy in terms of, where you can make those adjustments that you're talking about, and
Yeah.
where you probably should be in your most perfect poised positioning for you and the
And
horse.
you do it for your jumping round, right? So sometimes, like the test, if you come in and everything is to the left first, and that's not your strong way, you have to kind of have this mental attitude to say, okay, that's all right. I'm going my weaker way first, and I'm just going to know then that it's going to get better as it goes. You can't go in there and let yourself feel defeated, and most importantly, let your position show that you lack confidence or that you don't think it's going well, right? You have to like have this mindset instead that this is, this about you and your horse, and that actually you're really looking forward to the second half of your test where it's going to be like that much better. And like I said, great. Like then the judge is going to be, oh, look how much better they're getting as it goes. This is great. And everything, ends on a high note. So really knowing the test for you and your horse is just like how you would walk your course and plan it for you and your horse. You should be able to kind of go through the dressage test quite a bit the same way.
I love that. Um, and are there any other things that would be good to touch on now? Well, we can also touch base between the next couple of tests. But are there any like aspects of a horse and rider pair that just overall make you feel like, okay, they get it, whether it means that they're like really moving forward, or how they're using their corners? I keep going back to the corners things because
Yeah,
because it's
no,
what we talk about the most, and whether we should or shouldn't in dressage tests. But
literally. I
yeah,
I do
the
these
thing.
tune-up tips. Oh, every Tuesday on Instagram, I do a new tune-up tip. And one of like the first ones that I did was how to ride a corner. And I
Mhm.
feel like every other month we should just repost that one back through
I
because
bet.
it never gets old. And like corners and circles, especially like small circles, that's why they're in every test. Like they are difficult and
Mhm.
the footing can be deep. All of a sudden you go towards the end of the day and everyone has ridden through the same path and they didn't do a water and drag. Or quite the opposite. Now you're riding in grass. And it's really helpful to take a couple minutes when you first walk in and not right before you go, because that needs to be when now you're like warmed up and you're ready and you don't want to stop everything, right? Like that's a big pet peeve of mine as a trainer, and it's really never a good idea to just come walking around the arena as a judge. You don't think that this person is very serious. Everyone has a strategy, but when you're just like walking casually and telling the judge, "Oh, this is Fluffy's first show. I'm not exactly sure what you're hoping to get from us, but it's not going to be sympathy. It's usually fear that there's not much preparation that's gone into this, right? Or expect the unexpected here, right? Um, but you should notice, like, you think that you're riding in a flat, or you think that a space is flat until you try to put a dressage arena in it. And then suddenly you realize how much terrain there is. So, guaranteed on your grass arena, one of the corners is going to have a hill. And if that's where you're supposed to pick up your canter, or, try to do a lengthening and now it feels downhill, you should kind of check that out ahead of time. And that will help you, this information, so that you can be prepared and have some half halts. Or maybe you need to be a little bit conservative if it's first thing in the morning and the grass is more wet than you thought it was going to be. That gets a little slippery. And in that instance, maybe you can't go so deep into the corners. So your job is to showcase to the judge that your horse, like, one of the first things that we are looking for is, like, is your horse tracking up as it's going through these corners, around these circles? It's not having to change, like, going into a corner, it's not speeding up, slowing down, having to make shorten its stride to get really deep into a corner. People do that. It makes too many changes and too much things to manage, right? So now, anytime that a horse has to adjust its balance, it's going to use its neck to do that. So now, if you've altered, like, the tempo, change the balance, the horse now needs to use its neck. So now it's not going to be so soft and steady in the connection. So now you're thinking, now I have to try to do something with my reins because it's trying to come above the bit. So now you can see how you've just, like, set off this entire chain of reaction. So dressage really is about trying to be prepared. And that's why this, like, whole harmony idea, right? Really good dressage might not be a spectator sport because it shouldn't look like you're doing anything, unfortunately, right? It's very exciting to do because it feels like you really are mind readers, but watching it isn't super exciting because you're not supposed to be able to tell that anything's happening. It's just supposed to look like it just magically happens.
Yeah, it's magic. And it makes sense. If it's exciting, you're probably not having your best day out there.
Right. And
Um,
that doesn't happen from practicing the test. I will say that too. Even though we're doing a fix a test here today, like, it, riding the test 8 times does not make it perfect. Sometimes it just makes your horse a bit neurotic. I have one horse right now who actually does get comfort in knowing what's coming next. He's a emotional Irish horse, and I probably don't need to say any more than that, and everyone understands,
yeah.
right? But you have to be quite careful that your horse, remember, horses are very trainable. And if you practice the same canter transition in the same corner 6 times the day before you're going to go to the show, like, as you're just innocently trotting by to go across the diagonal, your poor horse is probably thinking he's trying to please you, do the right thing, and hop into the canter, and he doesn't know any different. So, yeah, there's all sorts of the mental, psychological side to dressage, which is also part of what makes it a test. I mean, it's called a dressage test. It's testing
Right.
a lot of things.
Yeah, I like that tip though, because I think when a lot of us get, like, stressed or anxious as the show is getting closer and we put pressure on ourselves, it does seem like, well, what can we do? Let's run through it again,
Right.
um, and that might not be, unless you have the rare Irish guy or
Yeah.
Irish like guy. Yeah, might not work in your favor. Okay, I think those were really great kind of intermission tips. Thank you for those. And what's your Instagram so people can get your tune-up tips?
Oh, it's at Blue Clover Eventing.
At Blue
So,
Clover Eventing. Okay,
yeah.
great.
And on Tuesdays, we try to do our Tune Up Tuesday. So it's usually dressage based, but then we also do all sorts of things. We'll break down rides of my own from the past week, or new rules, or bits, tack, rules, anything like
Oh,
that. So,
cool.
yeah,
I love it.
might be helpful. How to
Okay.
ride a
Yeah, there you go. You'll see that every month. Okay, here we go. This is Debbie Hornbaker. Debbie is just an absolute gem and contributes so much to the Ride IQ community. So I was really happy to see that she sent in a test. And this is training level test 2 that we're looking at.
This is great. So we'll be watching this. The judges from A, so we'll have a slightly different perspective, but we have to think that she has the halt in and out. And of course, should have stood still and been straighter on the move off. So that is the hardest part, right? You are all ready, set, go, and then you have to come in there and have the obedience to stand still. So unfortunately, that's going to be in the sixes for the not standing still, and then it does need to be straighter on the move off. But now he's more settled and has things to do again. He was fairly supple through the turn. And now the second half of the circle is even better. He's getting back into the swing of things. So we could even go up to, now see, this is what we're talking about. So we're 7 for our circle, but now as he was kind of going across, he got a little unsteady in the bridle again. So now we're going to have to dip back down. And then going across that diagonal, we have to think that you're in charge of changing the bend. He can't just automatically go across the diagonal and flip-flop. So we're going to think that you have to be in charge of when you're going from left to right. That's going to help pick that up. He wanted to be a little bit tight in that canter transition. And then you can see that it stays a little bit on the forehand through that. He looks like he's still dark gray, so he's still on the younger side, so strength still not on his side. So in the sixes for being on the forehand, but now he appreciates being able to stretch. And what's good about that is that he does maintain his balance while he stretches in that trot. So he's gotten the confidence in the trot, and that's good for at least a 7 for that stretch work. And that's a hard thing to do in a show atmosphere, especially for a young horse. So now he's marching in the medium walk. Remember our medium walk, we have our contact. He has some overstep. Across that short diagonal, we could go 7-5 even. And now for the free walk, he should stretch down as though he's grazing. So he has the stretching out, but he's not reaching down. So he's not across his top line. So that's going to be, even though the strides are good, I need to kind of be more over his back. So that's going to be back in the sixes for that. He did pick up the trot right at C, so we could be on a 7 there. So he didn't have a window. He has to be very accurate. Here he's looking more focused, but he needs to move more off of the inside leg. You can just see he's a little heavy on that inside shoulder and a little leaning into the left leg, but getting more settled into the contact. So at this level, good enough for a 7-7-5. And now let's see if we can keep him. So you think you keep him left as long as you want, and now he's gonna, he's not quite strong enough yet to think about kind of a lateral transfer from left to right. So that unsteadiness is going to knock us back down into the sixes, but the depart is better. He's definitely gaining confidence as he goes through this test, so that's nice to see. He's better balanced now this way, but still not enough off of the forehand for a 7, still on the sixes. He stayed much straighter in the transition back, however, so that's going to go up to the 7s. Good enough, at least from this angle, for an 8 down the center line and a halt salute. So that was nice to see, and that was a very positive experience for that young horse. So if she asked about what she can work on, he needs to get confident about changing direction, not often enough to make him panic. So not random changes of direction, right? But once he gets established, think about a figure eight, but like you would do two circles to the left to make him feel good. And then think about looping off once to the right. And then if he's good there, then loop back to the left. But if he needs to do a second circle to the right or a serpentine, but if you do a 3-loop serpentine and you've gotten to the end of your arena, the perfect thing about a 3-loop serpentine is now you can serpentine back up again to the top of your arena, right? It never ends. It's just infinite, right? That might be very good for him. And if he starts to get a little tough, any one of those serpentine loops, you can immediately turn into a 20-meter circle so that you can kind of just establish, deflate, everything's okay because he really kind of gets it. But then he has a little bit of a hard time starting to transfer when it's time to change the inside to the outside. And that would help him if you can get his confidence with it on a circle before challenging him with it more across those diagonals.
That makes a lot of sense, and that was really fun to see him, like you said, settle in the test. But I see what you're saying about like the stress kind of being showing through when he's making those transitions or changes of directions. But what a beautiful guy he is to watch.
He was, yeah, and he'll get the hang of it. And for right now, he's at a great place for this test. And for where he is, he's not expected or required to have a super duper amount of strength. So he's not supposed to be uphill. So what was really nice to see was that like in that trot, he was very willing to stretch down. So he understands that he's supposed to like seek that contact, right? He's supposed to go forward from the leg, find the bit, be happy to find it. Oh, good. The bit stretches down. I stretch down, and that's good, right? Yeah. So he's allowed to be there. And then you eventually start to tell him through half halts and strengthening exercises that he can shift his balance a little bit more onto his hind end. And then that would be like in straight dressage, what he'd start to think about to do training 3 and then up to first level, right? So, but where he is now, he's allowed to think about being stretchy and being forward. And it was nice to see that he got that memo the more that he went through his test.
Definitely. Yeah, that was really fun. Um, okay, I have a question for you, but first I'm going to let you, I can't decide what to do next. We have um, an intro test, we have a third level test. Um, we did our starter test. There's another training test. Do you have a preference since this might be our last one?
Should we even it out and do the intro test since we just did the training list for all of our straight
Sure.
dressage fans out there?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll pull up intro. And then my question for you is I know we had the collective marks at the end of both of the eventing tests, and we didn't have
Yes.
it at the end of that training test.
I was wondering if they were there. There's a lot of boxes. Was it included on the I'm happy
Oh,
to run through them if
would
you
it
want.
have been on the bottom? Okay.
Yes,
I
there's like
thought it was just
there's
yep,
5.
yep. Oh, got it. Yes. Gaits, impulsion, submission, rider position, and seat, rider's
Yep.
correct and effective
We
use of
can go
aids.
through all of those if you want.
Okay, so is it um are those consistent throughout USDF tests, whereas collective, like the harmony mark is consistent for USEA tests?
Correct. So, history lesson. Our USEA tests used to have eventing tests, even FEI. We used to have 4 boxes. And um, to make eventing faster,
Oh,
we did a bunch of studies and they actually kind of proved that we could come down to one score and make it a coefficient and that it wasn't actually going to change that much the mark, but it was going to save an incredible amount of time. So it started in FEI, and now even our national tests at all levels have just the one harmony score. In straight dressage, they're not trying to also go cross country and show jumping that day or that weekend. So they have stuck with the traditional format, but have tried to break things down over the years to make a kind of level playing field and make sure that it's not just about the most impressive moving horse getting fantastic marks at the end of the test. So, what you'll see is the coefficients are kind of all over the place for different things. So, we have our gait score. So, for our last guy here, I would say that I would give his gaits a 7. Um, Impulsion. And so now we're thinking about, was he forward and elastic? And I would have to say, and a lot of these things kind of all lump together. And we have to think about what we just said in the homework that we sent them home with. So we're going to think, oh, I'm going to probably dip down into the 6.65 range for my impulsion because he was forward, but we were lacking in our elasticity and our suppleness and our engagement we were talking about, even relative for his age and the level of the test. Ditto with our submission. And that's where it's really hard sometimes to weed through. They are so intertwined. And this is why it saves so much time not having to go through all of these boxes for the eventing tests. But these two things, as you can see, are the coefficient. And then we have the rider's position and seat, which I would say I would give her a 7, that everything was on the right track for there. But then for our correct and effective use of the aids, I would have to go down to a 6.5 because we had those moments where even though she was in the right place, she wasn't able to support him through, for example, those changes of bend or enough like in the canter when he was getting a little bit heavy. So it breaks down the moments of the test more.
I'm coming over, make sure I'm off mute and pulling up our next test. That was really helpful to go to and so interesting why that shift happened. It makes sense. And it's great that that works and still kind of gets us to the same place that it did before.
We're still doing it in our brains, but just really fast.
Yes. Um, okay, let me see. Intro test. Is that a USDF test?
Yes.
Okay, so intro, she is B. Apologies, guys. Stick with me for just 1 second.
I'm really impressed.
I don't think you should be. But we are going to make this work. Okay, here we go. Share. It's so funny, like in meetings or on this, just kind of narrating what I'm doing so you guys know I'm doing something. Okay, I have our test up, and this is our friend Carly. I'm gonna get us started and then I'll get us all organized.
So, intro test is we're thinking that we're back on the lines for the inventors out there that were in the realm of starter. So, this horse is absolutely in the freely forward. They're allowed to walk into the halt like that. And in fact, that was perfect. Look how forward that halt was. And because the momentum was allowed to go through the walk, the horse went square and very confident into that. I'm on an 8 or a 9 for intro.
Wow.
Yeah, like that was really good. So the fact that this horse is accepting the contact like this and having these moments of being round is exceeding the standards for what's required at this level. And you can see that it's happening within a very relaxed trot. So I'm thinking 7 for there. Unfortunately, that was not a forward downward transition. We could see the trip behind. So We need the hind legs to be pushing into the downward transition. And so I'm going to be on a 6-5 for that. And we just have to think it's always leg first, even for slowing down, which is such an abstract concept, but our horse needed a little bit more support there. So here we're doing our free walk. And I would say that it's hard to show the free walk on that small of a space. The horse was just starting to get the hang of it, so we need to show more stretch down. But I would give it a 7. For this level, they were brave, let go of the reins, allowed the horse. We need more energy though in our medium walk. I know it's hard to see starting down there, but they need to walk, like I said, like they have a plan. They're going somewhere. They're not just wandering. So let's go. If I'm doing that, then you're getting a 6. So no unauthorized assistance from the judge trying to have you go on. You can tell this trot has more energy right away. We're much brighter here in the trot. Nice relaxed tail swing. That is true. The judge never wants to see the tail swishing or the tail cranking around or off to the side. This is just a lovely little relaxed tail at the end. Even though here we're a little bit fussy in the bridle, so not as happy this way as it was, a little bit more supple to the left than it was to the right through that corner. We're straight down the center line, and we could see the difference in the halt. We didn't use as much walk, and it was a little bit more abrupt. And you can see it did the same trip behind that it did from the trot to the walk. So this horse still needs a little bit more time to prepare for those transitions, and we need to find a little bit more leg for our transitions. So, but again, for the intro level, off to the right start, and these are hopefully just the same comments and feedback that the judge would be giving you. And that's what, as a judge, we're required. Any score 6 or less, we're supposed to provide a comment with our score. So that way you have the reasons why you're getting something like that. If the score is a 7 or above, we're telling you it's fairly good. So we don't have to tell you why it's fairly good. We're saying, it's good enough, right? But I still try to give a comment for everything. Maybe not a 9, except maybe I say something nice. But even if it's an 8, I might still say why it could be better, because I myself am a complete perfectionist. So that's just me. So the judge would give you that, and hopefully they phrase it in a very positive and constructive way. But sometimes, remember, we're trying to say a lot of things in a really small box. So sometimes you end up with one comment over and over again because maybe that's the biggest point that they're trying to send home. So you have to kind of balance those things out when you read your tests. They've given you a comment because they had to, and they had a really small amount of time and space to say it in, and they want you to have one main takeaway when you read your test and take it home.
Makes perfect sense. And seeing you do this live really gives you an appreciation for how quickly things happen and how quickly you need to be focused and commenting on the next thing. So it's such a skill, and I could never do it myself, but I feel like I hone the skill. Let's talk about Carly's collective
Yeah.
mark,
So
and then
let's do
yeah,
this.
go ahead.
And yeah, so this is interesting. So this is why we have our starter test for eventing, because we believe that you need to be able to show the canter, because you're probably going to go out and canter on course. And in the intro test, we only have the walk and trot to assess for the gaits. So I'm going to go up to an 8 because those are the two that I had to judge, and I really liked the horse's trot, and we thought that the um, walk was enough, even though the video got a little bit far away from us. So I'm going to be positive and only judge what I could really see. Um, and you can also see the difference here, that the only thing that's going to be highlighted for the coefficient is submission. So at this point in this horse's training, was he just like submission? That's the most important thing. Basically, like, and it even says acceptance of steady contact, attention, and confidence. Okay, so like, was he doing the most basic things? So, impulsion, we said he was forward, and that maybe he could have gone a little bit more forward in the walk, but we're going to think 7. And his submission, and he was for this level especially there. So we're going to also think 7. The rider's position, keeping in balance with the horse. And I could say even a 7.5 for that. The effectiveness of the aids, I'm going to go down to 6.5, because one of the things that even talks about is the preparation of transitions. And we know that we highlighted that in our conversation. And then, especially at the intro level, geometry and accuracy. And this I'm going to go up to an 8, because oftentimes the circles don't touch the rails. You find people doing their transitions and leaving the rails, leaving the corners. And it's at this level that you teach people through your comments how to really use the arena. A 20-meter circle, the ring is 20 meters. It has to touch both sides of the ring. And good on you, you did that. So you get a high mark for that.
Yeah, what a promising pair. That was just really lovely to watch, and that's the dream.
Yep.
So, Carly, thanks for sending that in. My last question for you, Valerie, on that video is any training suggestions for Carly as she works with this horse? So I believe is 4, so she's got a youngster too.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, good for them. And that's awesome that she's giving him such a good experience and field trips and outings at that age. So I would just say, yes, those forward transitions. So tell yourself that you need your leg on for those transitions, and maybe doing transitions on circles where you're telling yourself that you're trying to bend while you're doing a transition would trick yourself into keeping your leg on because you're trying to bend, and so that you're not mental thinking that my leg might not make my horse think that I want him to come back. But your leg has to be there to keep steering while you're doing the transition, and then you'll get the hang of how much leg you need to support him, especially because he's still growing. He's got big gangly legs, so your legs talk to his hind legs. So you remember that your leg is there to talk to his hind legs, and his hind legs need help because he doesn't always know where they are right now.
Yeah, he's like, "What legs?"
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this was just as expected. Um, not only educational, but also very fun. And it was really cool to feel like we were in the judges booth with you. So thanks for pulling back the curtain for us, Valerie, and walking us through just what's going on in your mind as a judge so that these riders and other riders who are watching and thinking about their own rides can go into the ring just having more information about what you're looking for and where they might have opportunities to, like you said, even go up half a point in a handful of different boxes to make for a significantly better score.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being brave to send in your stuff to get reviewed, know that it helped everyone else out there. So
It is very brave. And as a reminder, you can find Valerie at Blue Clover Eventing on Instagram. Is there anywhere else that people should find you or anything else that you have going on that we should mention before we say goodnight?
no, I think that's basically it's on Facebook also. If people that are old like me are still on Facebook. Um,
We're
so
all on Facebook. Everyone that's watching this is on Facebook. We love it. We're never going anywhere.
yeah, yeah, no. So thank you so much for having me. I think what you guys do is awesome. So it's all about education. You just never stop learning. I'm getting ready to actually get to go do a big tour over in England, and we just got together and judged a bunch of videos together, just like we just did. And
Wow.
yeah, and it's funny, and we've been watching more presentations on making sure that our judging is, do we agree about, oh, what do we think about this, and should they go into the corner more? It's all about the corners.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
that's the thing.
right.
So it's funny, and this is for 4 and 5 star tests, not just these sorts of tests that we were doing today. So
Yeah.
you never stop learning. That's really fun. So everyone just keep challenging yourself to keep learning.
Oh, fascinating. I love that. You're still learning, you're teaching. We're all definitely still learning. So this was wonderful, Valerie. I hope that we can do something together again because you're just a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and have a wonderful time in Europe.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.